In a room, dozens of zombies lay motionless on the floor. They had fallen into a deep slumber due to the prolonged absence of fresh blood and flesh. Tonight, a team of survivors slowly descended from the roof of a building. They landed carefully in the gap, afraid to make a sound. The visitors were none other than the crowd from Alexandria's safe zone, and the purpose of their visit was the food in the warehouse next to them. Luckily, the zombies were all asleep, making their mission less difficult. This was a situation they had never encountered before, and as long as they didn't disturb these zombies, their mission would go smoothly. Approaching the door, Maggie and the group realized that it was locked. Magna took out her knife. She had been in prison for stealing before the end of the world. Opening locks was a piece of cake for her. Meanwhile, Carol noticed that most of the zombies on the ground were armed. Gathering these weapons could provide an additional layer of security for their community. However, Maggie shook her head, emphasizing that their priority was to find food. Just then, a noise sent shivers down their spines, but luckily, the zombies on the ground remained motionless. They cautiously opened the door and stepped outside. Entering a quiet hallway with no immediate signs of danger, they proceeded carefully to the end of the corridor and opened the door to the warehouse. Inside, two zombies lay dormant on the floor. Magna crouched in front of one of the zombies, exchanged a knowing glance with Kelly, and silently dispatched them. Only then did they focus on the shelves. Carefully removing the lid of one of the crates, they discovered military-grade compressed food bags, mostly containing beef, which was perfect for long-term storage. It seemed like their trip was indeed a success. They began packing these supplies and transported the loaded bags back to the rooftop. Daryl and the others, due to their heavier weight, remained on the rooftop to assist. Everyone was extremely cautious, trying not to make any noise while hoisting the bags. Any disturbance could potentially awaken the zombies below. Everything was going smoothly until an unexpected mishap occurred. The rope holding one of the bags snapped just as it was about to reach the rooftop. Fortunately, Daryl acted quickly and managed to grab it in time, preventing it from falling and alerting the zombies below. However, in the process, Daryl aggravated his injured arm, causing blood to flow down and drip onto a zombie's face below. The scent of blood stirred this particular zombie, showing signs of awakening. Gradually, more zombies began to react, and the group realized the situation was dire. Magna, inside the warehouse, also heard the growling and rushed out to investigate. Despite the urgency, the experienced survivors didn't panic. They picked up their weapons and fought off the awakened zombies, buying time because there was still some food left to be taken from the warehouse. Soon Magna has packed the last two bags. They quickly make their way to the room, but they're greeted by countless zombies. Luckily, Daryl and the others were up there covering them with their bows and arrows. Carol also picked up a rifle from the ground, but unfortunately, it was empty. Maggie found a handgun with a few bullets inside. Carol finally found a gun with bullets and handed a magazine to Maggie as well. With the cover of two rifles, the pressure on the group was greatly reduced. Kelly and Magna quickly retreated as well. When they got up there, the hook was lowered. Rosita and her two companions immediately tied the rope around their waists without hesitation. Carol stayed behind to provide cover fire with her rifle. Soon, the rope was lowered once again. Carol's rifle was out of bullets, so she was ready to secure the rope and prepare to retreat. But at that moment, Carol noticed a box of food in the corner and ran over to grab it. Daryl, who was above, understood Carol's intention and used his crossbow to cover her. Carol stuffed the food into her backpack without paying any attention to the zombies behind her. She trusted Daryl to watch her back, and he didn't disappoint. After securing the food, Carol finally tied herself to the rope and retreated, leaving behind the zombies waving at her in place. After Carol came up, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Overall, this mission had its share of surprises but was ultimately uneventful. Carol also brought Daryl's twin knives up with her. In the early morning, they returned to the Alexandria safe zone with their harvests. Since it was already autumn, the community appeared particularly desolate. Coupled with the previous destruction of food crops by the Whisperer's fire, recovery was going to take some time. These supplies were crucial. Furthermore, with the growing population in the Alexandria safe zone, food shortages were becoming a major concern. Negan, upon seeing everyone return, eagerly stepped forward to take the bags. Maggie, however, didn't look pleased. She held deep resentment towards Negan. Suddenly Maggie's son came over and said he had some good news for her. Maggie looked up, and three people approached her. They were part of Maggie's group from before but had gotten separated and had now found their way here. They had been like family to Maggie over the years and were well aware of Negan's presence. They all cast unfriendly glances at Negan. Of course, that was just a minor incident. After a while, Gabriel called for a meeting. Due to the influx of new people into the community, their food supply would only last for a week at most, so preparations were essential. The community's walls were also in constant danger of collapsing, requiring reinforcement by manpower. As everyone looked at each other, uncertain about what to do, Maggie spoke with a somber expression. "I know where there's still food. That's where I was before. At Meridian. We had to flee with the rest of our people because the Reapers had slaughtered so many of us, but there are still plenty of supplies and water storage there. The area also has wild game. We don't know much about the people who attacked us. They invaded our camp at night, and anyone they saw got killed, so we've named them the Reapers. However, one thing is clear, they aren't numerous, otherwise, they wouldn't have sent just a sniper after us. So, we can go there, bring back the food, and have enough to last until Alexandria's safe zone gets back on its feet." When this plan was proposed, Aaron was the first to object. He thinks that running so far away is too risky, and there's also a group of crazy people whose intentions are unknown. Moreover, the walls need reinforcement right now. Eventually, they had to resort to a vote. The majority supported Maggie's proposal, leaving Aaron with no choice but to accept it. That evening, they set out, but the weather took a turn for the worse, with heavy rain forcing them to press on through the storm. Negan was also required to participate in the mission because he was familiar with the route. He initially wanted to suggest waiting until the storm passed, but all he received in response were insults. No one was nice to Negan because of Maggie. As they continued, they spotted a subway station ahead and decided to enter, realizing that taking the tunnel route would provide shelter from the rain. Negan again suggests waiting until the storm stops. The tunnels could be dangerous. Negan had no choice but to say that we could just go north through the tunnel and change to another route at the airport station. Maggie doesn't dawdle and leads the group forward. Negan called out to Daryl to persuade Maggie. It's a bit of a tragedy for Negan, who's basically been ostracized from the group. There was nothing he could do. These people just wouldn't listen to his advice. So, the group proceeded along the tunnel, encountering some eerie situations along the way. However, every time Negan spoke up, suggesting they turn back, he was met with a barrage of mocking remarks, as if everyone had taken Maggie's side. Half an hour later, Daryl's dog suddenly stopped in its tracks, sensing something ominous ahead. The group also caught a whiff of a foul, rotting odor. As they approached, they saw body bags strewn across the corridor, extending as far as the eye could see. Everyone gasped in horror at the chilling scene. Daryl bent down to examine the situation, wanting to determine whether the bags contained corpses or zombies. A sudden movement startles them. Daryl swiftly dispatched it with his knife. Someone noticed that this zombie didn't seem to make any groaning sounds. Daryl opened the bag and found 2 fatal wounds on the neck of the corpse, almost decapitated, and it seemed like it had died not too long ago. They couldn't fathom who could be so cruel to kill so many people like this. A chill ran down their spines. Negan, in particular, questioned, "Are we really going to continue through a large graveyard?" Others turned their gaze towards the overall commander, Maggie. After a moment of silence, Maggie looked ahead at the writhing corpses and decided to press on. She ordered them to move the bodies aside to clear a path. Maggie led the way, and her followers didn't complain. As they walked, they killed zombies, then moved the bodies to the side. One of the young men, however, felt reluctant. He had lived under the protection of others before and was not willing to do such things. Distracted, he even missed a bag, and a zombie stood up and lunged at him. Negan rushed to his aid, pushing the zombie against the wall and smashing its head with a shovel. The crisis was averted, but no one thanked him. Maggie simply warned everyone to be more careful. Negan heard this and couldn't hold back his temper, questioning, "How should we be careful? Is this your great plan? Maggie, please tell me, what is there to be careful about?" Negan's point was simple. He believed that Maggie didn't know if this tunnel had an exit or if those killers were still around. He thought it was reckless to lead everyone into danger like this. After saying that, Negan prepared to leave. He didn't want to recklessly move forward, knowing there could be significant dangers ahead. The teenager also had the courage to speak out against it. He was also scared by the zombies. The others supported Maggie unconditionally, saying that if Negan wanted to go, let him go. But Maggie thinks Negan is familiar with Washington, and that having him as a guide will save him a lot of time. Suddenly, Negan mocked, "That's a nice thing to say. All these people, and you still need me to lead the way. Can't any of you read a map? You've called me out here just for one thing. Maggie, you want a chance to kill me. Even if we complete this mission in the end, you won't let me walk away alive. Will you? If you want closure, why don't we settle this right here?" right now, but I won't go out the way you want me to. Dying in this filthy tunnel is out of the question, just like Glenn. Speaking of Glenn, Daryl couldn't hold back and punched Negan because Glenn was a pain in his heart too. Maggie was infuriated by Negan's words and stepped forward, glaring at the bastard. After this brief episode, the group continued to move forward, still clearing the path as they went. At this moment, Negan noticed something ahead. When they heard Negan's voice, they all shone their flashlights forward. In front of them, a train was blocking the tunnel, and the corpses were piling up at its end. Alden's torch had run out of batteries and needed to be replaced. Their supplies were kept by 2 people, but they were not here. Everyone looked around and saw that the 2 were really gone, and one of them was the teenager. Looks like they should have run away in fear. One person began blaming Negan for scaring them away with his earlier comments. Just then, Daryl seemed to hear something and gestured for everyone to be quiet. All heads turned towards the darkness behind them, where more zombies were emerging, and they were not in small numbers. They stopped arguing. This was not the time for disputes. Daryl and a few others stayed behind to fend off the zombies, while Gabriel and the rest continued clearing the path ahead. They soon reached the back of the train. However, Negan, looking into the crevice, saw that it was blocked by rubble, making it impossible to pass through. Alden, checking the situation on the other side, found the same problem. Their only option was to try to pry open the train doors and see if they could pass through from the inside. They made several attempts, but the doors remained stubbornly sealed shut. Meanwhile, the number of zombies on Daryl's side continued to grow. If things continue like this, they won't be able to withstand it at all. He can only shout for a few people to retreat to the rear. Duncan, seeing that Alden's group couldn't open the door, signaled for them to move aside and took a running start, slamming his shoulder against it. Daryl made a quick decision, telling everyone to climb up onto the train's roof. There was no time to break open the doors now. They climbed up in an orderly manner. Daryl tried to evacuate with the dog in his arms, but the dog went straight through a gap in the side. The dog had become Daryl's companion, so he and Maggie agreed to meet at the next platform. With that, Daryl followed suit, chasing after the dog. The dog had vanished, probably having crawled out from under the train. The zombies from behind were closing in gradually. Maggie glanced back, realizing it was just her and Negan left. Negan wasted no time and quickly climbed up onto the train. Once Negan made space for her, Maggie followed suit. At this point, one zombie was dangerously close to Maggie, ready to grab her at any moment. Just as Maggie managed to grab the edge of the train's roof, the zombie seized her leg. Negan observed Maggie's dire situation and noticed the approaching zombies behind her. An evil thought crossed his mind. In that moment, Maggie felt hopeless. With so many zombies below, there was no way she could survive a fall. Fortunately, Maggie didn't tumble down but landed steadily on the ground. However, as she tried to climb back up, another zombie beneath the train pulled her down. The zombies from behind were getting closer. Maggie could only use her pistol to kill them, and after firing 3 shots in a row, the pistol finally ran out of bullets. Maggie was overwhelmed by the horde of undead in the tunnel. Meanwhile, the rest of the group had climbed to the top of a train car. The lid here was conveniently removable, and Gabriel led the way. Jumping inside, there were only 3 zombies, all of which Gabriel dispatched. 3 minutes later, everyone had jumped down from the train car. They attempted to open the door between the train cars, but the handle had rusted shut and was impossible to open. It was only at this moment that Alden noticed there was no one on the train roof. He asked if anyone had seen Maggie. Negan's expression looked a bit unnatural as he pretended to look back and spoke. The others also looked around but didn't seem to doubt Negan's words. Alden considered going back to search for Maggie, but the others discouraged him. Maggie had told them not to go back and look for her if she fell off during the operation, but to keep going and finish the job. Gabriel also adjusted his mindset. Now that the squad needed him to command it, he believed their current task was to pry open the door and proceed to the first train car. So, with their tools in hand, several people began working on the door. After 5 minutes of concerted effort, they finally managed to open the door. The group entered the train car in an orderly fashion. There were no zombies inside this car, and they headed straight for the door, ready to open the next one in the same manner. But at that moment, they heard a pounding sound, like it was coming from the train's roof. Negan suggested it might be zombies banging against the car, and just as he finished speaking, the sound became louder and more distinct. This time, it seemed to be originating from under their feet. Negan was uneasy. He He had a guess he didn't want to admit. Negan's guess turned out to be correct. It was Maggie. She had somehow survived and was down there. The first thing Maggie did when she came up was to look at Negan. Negan wiped away some nosebleed and admitted it outright. Faced with the accusations, Negan said, "I didn't actively try to kill her. She was in trouble, and I didn't go to help." There's a big difference. Negan's behavior may not have been immoral, but what he said made sense. The crowd couldn't refute it for a moment. At that moment, they heard a cry for help from the other side of the train car. They grabbed their weapons and rushed to the door, but when they saw what was inside, they froze. Trapped inside was the young man who had taken their supplies. He explained that they had opened a door in the tunnel, and many zombies had poured out, chasing them. It turns out the sudden influx of zombies in the tunnel was due to the actions of these two individuals who had fled. Negan wanted to go and help open the door, but Maggie stopped him. Opening the door now would mean facing a horde of zombies unprepared. Maggie's intention was to abandon the young man. With no other choice, Maggie sent Duncan to stop him. Alden was extremely displeased with Maggie's decision not to save him. He went up to help,